So what is a BL? Oh my god, I'm so glad you asked. BL stands for boys love, which comes out of yaoi in Japan, a genre of content that arose in the 70s designed around gay male relationships. Started as a subgenre of shoujo manga. Since finding its origins in manga, it has spread to a wide range of forms, and you can now find it in anime, drama, novels, video games, films, and pretty much anywhere on the internet you look. Yaoi as a term was a portmanteau of yamanashi, ochinashi, iminashi, which means no climax, no point, no meaning, referring to the fact that most of the works in the beginning were amateur creators and fan works that focused less on plot and character development than they did on other stuff. Boys love as a term was adopted in the 90s as an umbrella term for MLM romance media marketed to women. When I say MLM, I do mean men loving men, not multi-level marketing, both of which are usually marketed to women, and has since become the catch-all term they use across Asia for that entire genre of content. It differs from the more broad term of queer media, or even gay media, something I'll be getting to in a minute, in that it was originally not marketed to actual gay men. A lot of the OG yaoi and BL content was made by straight women, for straight women, and generally revolved around fetishizing gay men for sexual gratification, and oh god, this video is getting demonetized, isn't it? I'm not even a big enough YouTuber to get monetized yet, and I'm gonna get demonetized. A lot of these stories involve perfect-bodied men drawn without flaws, androgynous feminine features, extremely explicit imagery, and defining each member of the pairing by their sexual position. Tops, or semis, are usually the active pursuer, and yukes are the bottom and usually being pursued, often unwillingly, because the other main benchmark of yaoi, particularly early yaoi, is the incredibly prevalent culture. Non-con is seen as a sexy addition to the story rather than a horrifying omen of real life, and you can't scroll more than 2 inches without seeing a manga or a manhwa that depicts half the sex scenes as violent or at the very least vaguely non-consensual. Unfortunately, this is a trend that continued well into the genre's popularity, and even now there are shows being made with scenes that uncritically portray incredibly toxic behaviour as romantic. But we will get to it. BL nowadays has evolved from its original label of gay fetishization by women for women, and has now grown to encompass content made by gay men, as well as queer themes and people in general. And what used to be something that was seen as distinct from queer media because it wasn't for us, see this incredibly irate post from just 2 years ago screaming about how BL is not queer and how dare anybody imply that it is, and has now become a genre within queer media itself, often helmed by queer people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's break this down a bit.
Hold me close, you see, right on cause I know I wake up in your arms. You be my love, will you be my baby? You're watching over me, you're watching over right now. If the world is falling apart, you'll never take what's in our heart. Make it lost, just look your eyes, ready to fly. I'll do the same, right by your side. Free fall. Reality versus expectation.
So once I dipped my toe in the K-drama waters, it didn't take me long to find the gay shit. Oh yeah, we're doing costume changes this episode. Strap in! South Korea's first official BL dropped pretty much as I was getting into K-dramas, so it really was like fate. Now, there had been queer content made in Korea before, albeit not in the mainstream, as queer culture is still very much marginalised over there. There's exactly one openly out queer idol, Holland, and he came out in 2019. They have a ways to go, is what I'm saying, but BL has already pushed that forward in leaps and bounds in just the last 2 years alone. Their first little BL, Where Your Eyes Linger, dropped in May of 2020, followed shortly by Mr. Heart and then Wish You. And then, one by one, as companies began to realise how lucrative it was, more and more BL dramas had been made, and South Korea has gone from a country with queer content pushed to the side and allowed to thrive only in indie spaces like film festivals or online like Strongberry, to a genre they are actually willing to broadcast in just 2 years. Part of this can be attributed to companies like Strongberry, who have been making queer content that is received well online for years, and directors like Lee Song-hyeil, who is credited as making South Korea's first real Korean gay feature, and continuing to make queer content after that. Part of it can be attributed to the massive market for BL manhwas online. No, I'm not going to talk about killing stalking. Just go watch this video by James Somerton, it basically covers everything I want to say about it. Part of this can also be attributed to to the first gay subplot in a K-drama that wasn't just a subtle allusion to gay people existing, but an actual romance plot with characterization and impact. Love with Flaws was not a flaw of the show by any means, but the gay subplot, easily the best thing about it. The spotlight on the show was only amplified when Cha and-ha, one of the actors, passed away under undisclosed circumstances while it was being broadcast. The show did an incredible job of handling the fear men must feel being queer in South Korea under a misogynistic, toxically male culture, and the fact that it's his last performance makes scenes like this all the more poignant.
안 아프더냐? 너보다 좀 덜 과묵한 놈이면 좋겠다. 언젠가 네가 아빠한테 소개시켜줄 놈은 말이야.
죄송해요.
그건 죄송할 일이 아니야.
Love with Flaws came out at the end of 2019. By May of 2020, Korea's first official BL had dropped, and it all just snowballed from there. I don't want to definitively say I have seen every single Korean BL. I mean, some of them aren't out yet. But honestly, I have seen every single Korean BL. I'm sure there are short films and indie movies I have missed somewhere in the past or hidden on the internet, but in terms of the more mainstream, internationally available content, I have seen all of them. And I will continue to see all of them until I shuffle off this mortal coil. I've already discussed before that Korean men are more likely to appear queer to Western audiences due to the fact that they're more physically comfortable around each other. And I've mentioned numerous times now that the reason I love K-drama so much is that I love the romance of period dramas trying to make sexual tension without directly showing it on screen. Because I am gay and touch-starved. Now imagine you're me, and you watch a gay K-drama for the first time. Yes, I did in fact lose my McFucking mind. This is my shit. This is liquid gold to me. This is everything I've ever wanted in media. It's got yearning, prolonged eye contact, brief touches, yearning, angst, repression, hand shots, yearning, well-written conflicts and emotional beats. Oh, and did I mention hand shots and yearning? Some of them are better than others, as is true of every single genre of anything that exists ever. But the fact that they exist at all is a miracle. Anything directed by Hwang Da-sol, the writer-director of the first K-drama, Where Your Eyes Linger, is basically bound to be brilliant at this point. Everything she's directed has ended up as a favourite of mine, and she's worshipped in the BL community almost as much as Back Off No Panache. We will get to it. I don't have time to individually go through all 30 plus BLs, so I will simply give you my top 5 recommendations. I'm already cheating by putting every single Hwang Da-sol project as number 1, but this is my list and I can do what I want. So, in no particular order, number 1, Where Your Eyes Linger, To My Star, Blooming, To My Star 2, and probably Blooming 2 when it comes out, who knows. Listen, they're just great. Really human stories with flawed protagonists on both sides who care for each other deeply and often quietly, although one half of the pairing is usually more boisterous than the other. To My Star and its sequel are my personal faves because I am a deeply insecure, lonely introvert, and it speaks to me on a personal level. Number 2, Color Rush. With a plot straight out of a fanfic, this show is everything to me. People called monos live only able to see in black and white until they meet what they call probes, who allow them to see in a world of colour as long as they're also visible to the mono. There's a darkness underneath it because in this world it's well known that sometimes monos go crazy and get obsessive, kidnapping their probes in order to have permanent access to colours, and Yonu's main angst of the series is not wanting to become one of those people. It's fantastic. Don't watch season 2 though. It's a completely separate narrative to the first, and the love interest isn't in it, and it's just overall not as good. Number 3, Mr. Heart. This show really surprised me when I first watched it. I thought it was good, but not as good as Where Your Eyes Linger. It was the second one to come out after all, so there wasn't a lot to compare it to at the time. And then I sort of moved on, but of all the dramas over the last couple of years, this is one I have returned to repeatedly. It's just incredibly sweet. An adorable labradoodle of a guy falls in love with a stoic runner and learns to run so he can be his timer for races. Part of what makes this one a keeper for me is the emphasis on their power imbalance and how they correct for it. It's just delightful. Number 4, Light on Me, also known as Sabet Boys High School Council. No Shinwoo, my son, my angel light of my life!
뭐야? 또 뭐 잘못했어?
뭔 소리야? 그런 거 아니거든.
아닌데. 분명히 너는 미안할 때만 잘해주는데.
너도 참 눈치 없다.
Actually, all the boys in this show are my sons, and I will shout their praises from the rooftops. This is one of the few dramas I watched as it was airing, something I generally refrain from doing because it stresses me out too much. But here, it was worth it. I am so attached to this little queer friend group, it made me feel very seen. And for all you neurodivergent queers out there, at least one member of this group will speak to you personally. I guarantee it. Number 5, Semantic Error. I know I said I wasn't ranking these, but if I had to, Semantic Error would probably come in first. Maybe tied with To My Star. It's just so good. Talented, free-spirited artist is stopped from graduating university by a student a year or 2 below him who doesn't credit him on a group project because he didn't participate, so he didn't get the credits to graduate. So he decides to annoy the guy into submission. The guy in question is not impressed.
야 상우야 음식 남기면 벌 받아 임마.
and yet for some reason he's drawn to him anyway. It's just so good! Plus, in this house we love openly bi representation, and this show gave us not one but two iconic bi characters, as well as everybody's favourite angry repressed gay.
내가 아는 거 대충 얘기해보자면 주영 언니, 세범이, 테리, 그리고 신입생 때 과 선배랑 과 CC 2달. 그리고 너무 내 스타일이었는데 내가 그때 여자친구가 있어서 못 고신?
Can't wait for Sam to get back from military service so we can get a season 2 as soon as possible. After consuming all the kdrama BLs that are available to me, which at the time was about 3 and Strongberry's back catalogue, I turned to the internet to find more options. And the first thing I found was Thai dramas, but I have a lot to say about those, so we're leaving them for last. But about the same time as I discovered Thai dramas, I also discovered I had heard of YAOI before 2020, I just never showed any desire to get into it. It all seemed very over-sexualized to me, and I was really unfazed by and uninterested in consuming it. I'll take signs I should have realised I was ace way sooner for 500, Alex. But it wasn't until I came at it from a different direction that I realised it wasn't all manga porn. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of that. But Japan is fascinating in terms of media because there seems to be this really distinct line between their sexualized media and their non-sexualized media. Some queer Japanese content I've seen has non-con nudity and graphic sex scenes. The rest of it is the cutest, most innocent shit I have ever seen. There is no in between. I'm deadly serious. In Western media, I would say most of our content falls between the two ends of the Japanese BL spectrum in terms of physical intimacy portrayed on screen, but J-drama BLs rarely step out of their very specific circles. I'd say in the Venn diagram, the only things in the middle slice are his and Life, Love on the Line, which both portray a vaguely domestic approach to sexuality and relationships. Everything else is either single closed-mouth kisses at the climax of the story, or content so graphic I would never escape demonetization again if I were to show a clip of it. Even shows that deal with darker or more grown-up themes like Utsukushikare or Minato's Coin Laundry or Old-Fashioned Cupcake still leave the more central elements of their plotlines to the subtext, and all three of them only really have one major kiss scene, usually right at the end before the story is wrapped up. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all, I'm just saying it's something I've noticed. Something else I've noticed is the distinct vibe Japanese BLs and Japanese content in general gives off. There's something about the way these shows are made, although I'm not exactly sure what, whether it's the music or the shot composition or the scripting or any number of little details about the way they incorporate the location, that feels ever so slightly off. Again, not in a bad way, just in a way that makes them completely unique from everything else you watch. There's an existential aura to Japanese BL, even in the cutesy fluffy ones. The only word I've been able to put to it is haunting. Japanese BLs are haunting, affectionate, and I love them. Top 5 Japanese BL recs in no particular order. Number 1, his. This is a film about a gay guy living in a small town whose high school boyfriend with his daughter comes back into his life. It's a slow rumination on relationships and queerness and parenting and the love people deserve to give themselves. Number 2, Utsukushikare and Old-Fashioned Cupcake. Combining these two because I can. They both have the dynamic of one person secretly admiring the other, and that's about the only similarity. Utsukushikare is a commentary on obsession and putting people on a pedestal, and Old-Fashioned Cupcake is about two adults learning to enjoy carefree things again.
笑うと可愛いんだな。俺の更年期障害より君に彼女がいないことの方が問題なんじゃないのかな。
それは別に。
They're both great. Number 3, Kiera Hatsukoi and Mr. Unlucky Has No Choice But to Kiss. Combining these two mainly for the chaotic vibes. Kiera Hatsukoi is about a kid who ends up in a misunderstanding where the hot guy in class thinks he has a crush on him, so offers to date him.
いや、井田君ハートって何それ？
And Mr. Unlucky is about a man whose life is plagued by terrible luck, but whose life gets better when he's around the hot popular guy at uni who seems to have infinite luck.
顔がいい人種。ならよかった。どっか痛めてないか。無理やり引っ張ったし。いや、大丈夫です。
The main thing grouping these two together is the chaos. Anybody who watches manga or has seen a comedy J-drama knows exactly what I'm talking about here. Deranged characters doing ridiculous things for fun. And it is fun. Number 4, The Cornered Mouse Dreams of Cheese. This is from the other circle in the Venn diagram, so approach with caution. A man is cheating on his wife, and the PI she hires to tail him is one of his college friends who is gay and has fancied him for years. The PI promises not to tell his wife if he lets him kiss him. The plot unfolds from there.
そんなことできるかよ。
結婚してる身で付き合ってことが表面化したら結局奥さんを選ぶ。そんなのどんなお別れのやり方したって結局残酷だろ。
It's very good, but to my fellow ace girlies, please be warned, there is more than one pretty explicit scene. Not like Mood Indigo pornographer playback levels of explicit, but actually, no, yeah, it's about that. Number 5, Cherry Magic. The one I know a massive chunk of you were already screaming at the screen from the moment I started talking about Japanese BL, Cherry Magic, or Cherry Magic, 30 years of virginity can make you a wizard? Basically exactly what it says on the tin. A man wakes up on his 30th birthday only to find that he can suddenly read the minds of anybody who is making skin-to-skin contact with him. This is a nightmare for him, as he is a socially awkward little introvert who hates human contact. But one day, pressed into the elevator, he overhears the thoughts of the coolest guy in the office thinking about the guy he likes, and then very quickly realizes that it's him.
こいつ会社に好きなやついんの？
また寝癖ついてる。
寝癖？どの子だ？モテを極めた黒沢に好かれるラッキーな子は。
足立にバレてないかな。
え？
This show is everything to me. It's soft, it's heartwarming, it has ace representation, it has a healthy respect for people who haven't had sex into their 30s, it puts a great deal of value on open communication and respect for boundaries, and it's one of the best BLs I've ever seen, period. Although, despite what the title and premise may suggest, you don't see any thirsty content at all in this drama. Not a lick. So all you horny freaks will have to take your patronage elsewhere. Maybe somewhere like... Taiwan was the only country able to host a Pride in 2020 and is considered a beacon of LGBTQ+ liberation within Asia, holding the second largest Pride in the continent and creating some of the best produced mainstream queer content around. They have a pretty big queer cinema culture already, have done for years, and half the short films and miniseries on queer streaming services like Gaga Ooh La La are Taiwanese. So when it comes to BL, they really hit the ground running, which is why I feel confident in saying that Taiwan has some of the best horny gay content out there. Japan might have the most explicit, but Taiwan's execution is simply the best.
Better than all the rest, better than anyone.
There's a healthy approach to physical content and skinship that is rarer in the other countries' dramas, although they are catching up. Sex isn't just saved as like a post-amble to the kiss or the climax of the series at the end, although that's often still the case. It's also discussed by characters. It happens before the end. It happens naturally. There are even times when one character realizes they're not ready and puts a stop to it.
我身上我经过熟悉的脆弱，
关系
谁的记忆
还有很长时间。
都舍不得。
In terms of the BL scene, that shit's revolutionary. Because remember way back when I said this genre's roots are in fetishized non-con scenes written by straight women for straight women? Every year, Taiwan looks that origin in the face and kicks it a little further away. Taiwanese BLs feel queer. There used to be a much clearer distinction between BL and gay cinema, which I think was to its detriment, because it's like we're discounting a whole section of gay media because it wasn't made with gay people in mind. But countries like Taiwan blurring that line are making it a lot easier to put under the queer umbrella and take back that gay content for ourselves, as well as normalize it for heterosexual people in a less gross fetishizy way. We're liberating BLs, baby! And who better to do it than Taiwan? So, my top 5 Taiwanese BL recommendations. Number 1, Your Name Engraved Herein. Let's start off critically acclaimed and sad. This movie is brilliant. You can find it on Netflix, and I highly recommend you do, because it's such a beautiful, heart-wrenching love story of two boys who can't ever admit that they both have feelings for each other. Have you ever cried watching a sex scene before? You will! While it's not technically BL as much as it is gay cinema, I'd like to think we have blurred the lines enough between the two in the last few years that we can make it count. Or at least Taiwan has. Number 2, About Youth. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have About Youth, which is just the cutest, patootiest thing to come out of Taiwan. High school drama, 2 main couples, good music, we love to see it. Number 3, History 3, Trapped. A cop pursues a member of the Taiwanese mafia who he thinks is the culprit for a crime committed 4 years ago. But little does he know, said mafia boss is also trying to unearth the culprit for that crime. Hijinks and sexual tension ensue! I love my chaotic queer cop mafia pairing, and their deranged antics and goofy side pairing and fun dramatic mystery plot. It's silly, it's serious, it's fluffy, it's dramatic, 10 out of 10, would recommend and have to anybody who will listen. Number 4, We Best Love, number 1 for you. Rivals to lovers romance. You may have guessed that I have a thing for enemies to friends to lovers, and you'd be right, but that's only because it's the superior dynamic. Not friends to lovers, also good, or enemies to lovers, perfectly fine, but enemies to friends to lovers. The ultimate. God tier. We Best Love is about rivals for the number 1 spot academically and how one of them is always second, and it drives him crazy until finally they go their separate ways after high school and he's finally number 1.
从国小、国中、高中各种比赛，英文、作文、围棋、辩论、短跑，都因为他我只能拿第2。
right up until his rival suddenly shows up at his university and starts showing him up again. It's stupid, it's heartfelt, it's passionate, and I love my dorks with my whole heart. The sequel series isn't as good, but I still watched it through more than once just to see them because their chemistry is insane and it's so easy to get sucked in. And number 5, the rest of the history series. Yes, I'm lumping things together again. No, there's nothing you can do about it. The histories are just unparalleled. Every year there were at least one, but usually 2 dramas under the banner of history, every single one being its own story. History 1, My Hero, is a post-death body swap. Stay Away From Me is about someone falling for his new stepbrother, and Obsessed is about an unhealthy obsessive relationship. None of them have any crossover at all, and all of them are good in their own way. Although they really peaked with Trapped, which is why I made that its own separate entry. History 3, Make Our Days Count, is great if you want to cry yourself to sleep after watching something. History 2, Crossing the Line, is an adorable sport drama. History 4 is problematic in some ways, but super fun as long as, and this goes for basically any media you consume, you're aware of potential triggers before you watch it. They're well made, well acted, and honestly they feel as close to mainstream Western media as you're going to get in terms of their storytelling and cinematography. Like, if I turned on ITV and something like Make Our Days Count was on, I wouldn't question it. They're all great, but it's a mixed bag, so I suggest Googling the synopsis and just pick and mixing the ones you like. Next up! China doesn't make BLs because they're homophobic. Vietnam's BL scene, okay, there's more to it than that. Because of their homophobic Hays Code, they can't make explicitly gay content, so what China does is bromances. But I have way too many thoughts about those. And this video is long enough already, so I have a whole other video in the works just about those. Watch this space. Vietnam's BL scene is propped up by one man and we must all bow before him. Nguyen Ba Vinh, I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, has been in basically every Vietnamese BL drama that has been released since the first one in 2020, and we love to see it. They're pretty much all web dramas, so they're all available on YouTube or Gaga, and while Vietnam's BL industry is in its infancy compared to other countries I've mentioned, they're still doing a wonderful job. They're a great addition to the oeuvre and I hope they keep it up. I'll do a top 3 for them because doing a top 5 feels too exclusionary when there aren't many more than that out there. Number 1, Goodbye Mother. This was the first Vietnamese thing I watched, period, and it's a movie about a gay couple where one of them brings his boyfriend home to meet his family but doesn't tell them it's his boyfriend, just that it's his roommate, and the fallout from that. It's beautiful and I adore it. Number 2, You Are My Boy. One of the OG Vietnamese forays into BL from early 2021. A little slow and awkward, but a delightful little drama with some pretty cute chemistry. Number 3, Mr. Cinderella. A man has been daydreaming about his Cinderella, a girl he had a crush on when he was a kid, for years, only to meet him when he's an adult and find out it's actually a man. And not only that, but he's a hot doctor who saves him from harm. It's cheesy and dramatic and great. Vietnam is just getting started and I can't wait to add more entries to this list. Here's to a long future making more. More also seems to be the general philosophy of the Philippines, whose dramas I can describe as everything from soap opera to musical, and whose unbridled nonsense is only paralleled by their commitment to kiss scenes. And boy are they committed. When I say these dramas are a lot, I mean they're a lot. It's not always my cup of tea, but honestly I still think it's great because the Philippines is notoriously not great in terms of their treatment of LGBTQ+ people overall, so the fact that queer culture has not only managed to thrive despite these restrictions and discrimination, but also that they can create relatively popular shows based around queer characters and themes, that can only be a good thing. My top 5 Pinoy BLs are, number 1, Like in the Movies. This is one of the more low-key, realism-based dramas, which is part of why I like it, but it also has a kind of sad/bittersweet/ambiguous ending, which is not for everybody. 2 guys end up living together, one of whom is comfortably queer and the other of whom is just sort of realizing he might be. It's quiet and soft and sweet and I adore it. Number 2, Game Boys. Another one of the more low-key ones and definitely one of the highest acclaimed. This one got a sequel series, a movie, and is generally seen as the best Filipino BL out there. It was created and set during COVID with 2 guys falling in love over voice chat and video calls while playing games together. It's fantastic.
Wala na iba yung tumalo sa'yo. Di bakit babae yung hero mo? Sama ba? Kapag lalaki, bawal na gumamit ng babaeng hero? Hindi. Hindi ko na in-expect dyan sa itsura mo.
Number 3, My Day. Ramping it up in the chaos category, we have My Day. An up-and-coming chef named Sky joins a multi-billion-dollar company and wins the heart of his bitter boss, Ace. The irony is not lost on me that this show has numerous steamy scenes, and yet one of their protagonists is called Ace. Respect. Number 4, Rainbow Prince. This one is a musical. I repeat, this one is a musical.
Sana makuha mo ang nararapat sa'yo. Reality reality versus expectation.
It's got this hysterical balance between high enough budget for good costumes and locations and a low enough budget that the sound quality, camera direction, acting and dialogue is completely deranged. Come for the fun musical numbers, stay for the campy acting choices.
Oh, the outfit. I was working out with Juniper and Bobby.
Maybe we could work out sometime, you know? Just you and me.
Oh, you and me?
Yeah, just you and me.
Sure?
Sounds great.
Are you okay, Chup Chup? Anyway, I'll be heading back home. Alright, you guys take care, okay?
Does it even have a script outside of the musical numbers? Who's to say? 10 out of 10 would recommend. Betsin and Sleep With Me. These are actually GLs, and they're both pretty good. One is a kind of breakup drama, and the other has some interesting commentary on disability and relationships, and I recommend them both for different reasons. But really, I just wanted to use them as an excuse to segue into a discussion about another big factor in BL moving away from its origins and towards a more holistic approach under the queer umbrella is the emergence of GLs, or, you guessed it, girls' love dramas. They're still less common than BLs because they didn't always belong to their own genre, largely because being female in queer is slightly less stigmatized than being male in queer in most places, so you're more likely to see a queer-coded woman on TV than a man, or see two women kissing than see two men kissing, outside of BL. This is part of why BL has had a surge of popularity, especially since it has been helmed by more actual queer people. But even back in the day, queer men were starved for content that wasn't desexualized to the point of parody. Gay men on TV, even as little as 2 decades ago, were neutered, rendered sexless, in order to offend the least amount of people possible. While for women, the pendulum swung in the opposite direction. Our sexualities were overexploited to the point where you'd see two women kiss before you saw them pass the Bechdel test. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. The normalization of queer women in Western media is very similar to the origins of yaoi in that it largely wasn't made for women, but made by straight men for their own gratification. And there are lots of arguments to be made about the costs of lesbianism being more normalized, but only under the scope of what heterosexual men find hot, versus the queer content being made by actual queer people and showing them as whole people rather than sexy caricatures. I would love to be a sexy caricature. Someone come over here and sexualize. Both sides have been negatively affected in different directions, and rather than divide the community, I'd much rather come together because Lord knows the right-wing reactionary pieces of shit are going to do everything they can to tear us apart. They've already started. I say that like they haven't been doing that for the last, 100 years. But anyway, support drag queens, support trans people, don't be a dick! So, with the popularity of BLs rising in the queer community, it was only a matter of time before mainstream GLs started getting made too. Every country has done it, although some are slower on the uptake than others, and in terms of other sexualities representations, Japan has probably got ace rep in the bag, while Taiwan is waving the bi flag and jumping up and down. There has been some suggestion recently to change the name for it all to QL, as in queer love, and rebrand the genre under that label to distinguish it from yaoi and to not draw such a gendered line between Will-O-Wur and Mulama romances. Especially considering that the titan of the BL industry has one of the best track records for trans representation in the world. Finally, we have reached Thailand! For those of you who skipped every other section to get here, I see you, I understand you, I respect you. Strap in, this is going to be the longest part of the video. And yes, I am filming this on a different day to all the first half. I ran out of daylight, it's winter here, it gets dark at 3 PM, and it's currently 2:30, so we are chasing fucking daylight here, kids. God, where do I even start? Thailand is basically the linchpin of BL's popularity. Japan might have originated it.
Excuse me, we originated the language.
But Thailand really made it mainstream, turned it into a profitable, brandable genre of television. Yaoi manga had a large following in Thailand for a while, and a number of web authors started penning their own BL series and novels, which picked up huge numbers of followers, and it wasn't long before Thai television companies started testing the waters. At first, they did what Korea did, albeit before them, adding them in as secondary subplots to gauge the reactions of the public. But once these subplots started to gain more popularity, it was inevitable that they would make a series spotlighting a gay romance. In 2014, Channel 9 Network released Lovesick, the series, which was hugely popular and became the catalyst for more Thai channels to follow suit. By today's standards, Lovesick isn't the best in terms of modern representation, and it's more of a lakon, like a Thai soap opera, than a full-fledged BL drama the way we come to understand them today, but we have to respect it for at least opening the door. A second season that was twice as long as the first was commissioned in 2015, which was just as popular. Trans characters had been in shows for a while, but BL as a genre really amplified their existence, and not just as the butt of the joke, but as actual full-fledged roles. Plus, they often just casually exist in shows, with their transness not even mentioned at all, which is equally nice. Both of those things are good. To have stories revolving around a trans character's transness is good, and to have a trans character just existing and have the transness not even addressed is also good. They're both Great. Not to mention, household names like Jenny Panan became even bigger as a result of her roles in things like 3 Will Be Free, and also as an MC for interview shows involving BL casts. It wasn't just a niche interest anymore, it was a mainstream genre. Following this, a number of other companies jumped onto the BL train, with a subsidiary of the largest entertainment conglomerate in Thailand completely monopolizing the market. That's right, it's GMMTV, baby! There were a few other companies like Line TV also releasing shows like Make It Right around the same time, but with GMMTV's release of SOTUS, they basically instantly cornered the market. Nowadays, SOTUS is divisive because of its plotline that hinges on college hazing, its introduction of the beloathed phrase, "I'm not gay, I just like insert name here."
ไม่ได้ชอบผู้ชายกูชอบพี่อาทิตย์เอ้ามันก็เหมือนกันปะวะมันไม่เหมือนกัน
Forgetting that other forms of queer and bisexuality exist. And the behind-the-scenes nonsense of one of the cast members that I'm not going to get into here because I have more to say about that later. But it was insanely popular. It shot the 2 lead actors, Chris and Singto, to instant stardom and was given a second season later in 2017. It also solidified the running joke that all engineering students are gay, which continued into future BLs that seem to constantly be set in the engineering department of universities. We love to see diversity in STEM and trades. Represent. Both seasons won a ton of awards, and with shows like Puppy Love and Waterboy doing well in between the 2 seasons, we will talk about that. It basically confirmed to the company that if they kept making BLs, they would keep making money. In order to prove this theory, they spun off a gay side couple from Kiss the series, and gave them their own show with a story of how they got together, called Kiss Me Again. Tae and Nu, the actors in that, were also shot to megastardom, and GMMTV created a branded approach to their BLs. The couples weren't just actors, they were a couple. They were conjoined, they were a product not to be sold separately. This makes a lot of sense if you know anything about how Asian fandom works, but to the West it can be a little uncomfy. I've already talked about my thoughts on that in this video, so I don't want to belabor it too much here, but treating real people like products is fucking weird, and getting angry when they act romantically alongside people who aren't from their original show is a weird as hell reaction to have. But you'll have to get used to it, because it's about to get a whole lot more prevalent. Still in 2018, we have 'Cause You're My Boy starring Frank and Drake, Friend Zone, which was a messy gay kind of soap opera starring Singto from SOTUS, and Our Sky, which was basically a selection of special episodes as epilogues for the previous series GMMTV had aired. In 2019, we had He's Coming to Me, again starring Singto, legend that he is, and also starring Om Pawat, who had made his name way back in 2017 as a teenager in Make It Right. Then we had Theory of Love, the series that cemented Off-Gun as one of GMMTV's most lucrative couples, and Dark Blue Kiss, the sequel to Kiss Me Again that cemented Tainu as household names too. During this period of time, GMMTV's pillar couples were Chris Singto, Off-Gun, and Tainu. And while they were the godfathers of BL, they did not stay lonely up there for long. In 2020, we had Together, the series which made Brightwin a thing, Kind of the Shipper, Still Together, the sequel series to Together, My Gear in Your Gown, Friendzone 2, Dangerous Area, a special episode of Theory of Love, and Tonhon Chonlati. In 2021, we had Tale of 1,000 Stars, Fish Upon the Sky, Bad Buddy, and Not Me, which both aired into 2022, and that's when things really got crazy, because this year we had Enchanté, Cupid's Last Wish, Star in My Mind, and Sky in Your Heart, Vice Versa, Magic of Zero, The Eclipse, and My School President, Never Let Me Go, and Midnight Hotel have all started airing and won't finish until early next year. Not to mention The Warp Effect, which I hadn't started watching when I recorded this, and is in fact one of the queerest things I think GMMTV has ever made. The lineup for next year has already been announced, and that's even more chock full of BL drama. Pretty much all of these shows are posted internationally available to the official GMMTV YouTube channel with English subtitles, so they are incredibly easy to watch, even if you live half the planet away, and you don't have to pay for a subscription service. GMMTV has well and truly leaned in, and that's fucking fantastic. And while it is fantastic, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is that some of these shows were bad. I'm not just talking about GMMTV here. There were a lot of other companies jumping onto the BL bandwagon at around the same time. But all this is to say that Thai BL, and especially early Thai BL, really plays into some of the more negative yaoi stereotypes. And here's where I need to talk about Waterboy. Before I start, I adore Earth and Nu, and I'm so glad they're both popular enough in their own respects that this show is barely a blip on their radars anymore, but oh my god, I thought I hated Earth for a year after I watched this show. I almost didn't watch A Tale of 1,000 Stars just because he was in it, because his character in this show, the main character, is so horrible. He's homophobic while being secretly queer himself, and he takes a lot of his homophobic anger at himself and his dad out on his love interest, played by Nu, who is consistently messed around by Earth's character so much that by the end, I was screaming at my screen for him to run. It plays up the cheating bisexual trope, it makes light of a gross power dynamic between a coach and a student by claiming that it's homophobic not to endorse it. We had a lesbian both portrayed as a predator and then had her lesbianism erased by the end. And the first kiss scene between the main couple is literally a sexual assault. It's watching shows like this that make me understand people like that person on Reddit earlier claiming that BL isn't queer. Because, my god, this can't have been made by queer people, about queer people, or for queer people. Which is crazy, because the 3 directors on it are directors who have made other queer shows incredibly well, some of whom are queer. What the fuck happened here? This is a show made to capitalize off queer misery and torture porn, and it is deeply uncomfortable to sit through. Luckily, GMMTV has mostly learned its lesson from that and has made more of an effort in recent years to hire queer directors and writers and actors, which is a massive step forward considering that when BL started airing, it was common knowledge that you basically couldn't be openly gay to be cast in one. And yet, you were required to tongue your co-star on a regular basis. Sometimes not even as your characters, but for promotion on reality shows or stage tours. Seems insane, right? But despite the television market diversifying year after year, despite Thailand's massive queer underbelly and huge trans population, the government and the culture itself are still incredibly homophobic. So these actors, a lot of whom aren't queer, get into BL because they know it can basically kickstart their careers overnight and guarantee an instant fan base. And then they have to spend however long the show is airing, and before and afterwards, doing fan service with their scene partner in every promotion they do. Hilariously, queerbaiting is a massive part of Thai BL, the genre about gay people. And in order to maintain the illusion that these men are dating, they're not really allowed to be openly dating anybody else, or having frank discussions about their sexuality. So it's basically written into contracts the exact same way it's written into K-pop idols' contracts that they can't date, not just for homophobic reasons, but also out of fear of the legions of fans who get off on shipping the 2 actors together, having their dreams shattered when it turns out that one or both of them is straight and goes ballistic. The phrase gay for pay gets thrown around a lot, and I get why some people can be bitter about that, but as discussed in my Kit Connor video, it's nobody's business if somebody is queer or not. And they don't need to publicly come out to play a queer character. If they are believably acting in love with another man, why the fuck do you care about their personal life? It's not your business. But BL makes it your business. It's in the marketing, it's in the interviews, it's in the advertisements. They're not just selling a show, they're selling a couple. And that makes it very hard to draw distinct, healthy boundaries between fans of the show, fans of the actors, and fans who ship one or both of those things. It's why people reacted so badly when Chris made comments about his own sexuality that, somewhat subjectively, implied that fans asking him if he was gay was offensive to him. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on in his head, and he absolutely shouldn't have scoffed at the idea like that, especially when he's, acting in a gay show. But come on, guys. He was probably bombarded daily with people shipping him with his friend, accusing him of lying for clout, and blowing every tiny thing he did out of proportion. I'm not saying that he's ally of the year, but I am saying that calling him outright homophobic for that feels like a little bit of a stretch to me. You cannot like Chris, and he did take a break from BL after this, although he's actually going to be in a new one that's coming out early next year again, but the level of vitriol that comes up whenever his name is mentioned is fucking scary sometimes. I understand why. The connection BL promotion breeds between the stars and the fans is incredibly parasocial. Not to mention queer audiences haven't really had as much opportunity as straight audiences over decades of entertainment to get a little bit more normal about those things, so our parasocial attachments tend to be a lot more intense because they used to be so rare for us. It's why people glommed onto the Supernatural cast, even though ostensibly 2/3 of that cast weren't very receptive to the queer stuff. So comments like that probably felt like a direct betrayal to the fans who felt he owed his whole career to them. But let's reserve judgment till his new series comes out. Maybe he is homophobic and only going gay for pay, but that's not for us to say until he comes out and says it. And also stops kissing men on TV. He might not be furthering the cause exactly the way we want him to, but he's not standing in the way of it. And if anything, he's part of what opened the door for the more inclusive BLs we're getting today, albeit tangentially. The Han Type, a show produced by Me Mind Y and based on a story by Mame, those who know, is another example of this really weird dynamic between the audience and the actors. The show itself is divisive, and you can like it or not, that's not my business. But you have to admit that the way that Golf and Mew were directed to constantly act like a couple in public started to feel a little exploitative after a while, right? There are 1.2 thousand Mew Golf fanfics on Wattpad. People have made thousands of videos of every tiny moment caught on camera, dissecting it as proof that they must be a couple.
ไม่เคยลองเดททางน้ำไม่เคยลองแบบอะไรทางน้ำเลยที่เราไปงานล่องเรือกันอันนั้นนับเหรออันนั้นนับไหมถ้าอันนั้นนับก็ได้
And sure, they might be dating, or they might just be the kind of close friends who are physically clingy like that. But either way, say it with me, it's not our fucking business! On the other hand, you have actors like Max Tool, who made their name in Together With Me, a show that is notable for basically normalizing more explicit sex scenes in BL. Which is important because before that they'd all been fairly sterile. Not that that's a bad thing, just that it was pretty one note, and they usually only had one closed mouth kiss, unless they were Waterboy, and we've already talked about that. Max Tool are best friends, and they are just naturally very physically affectionate, and we know they love doing skinship and fan service.
Don't stop.
大个加油我爱你我喜欢你
อ่านบทต้องเซ็กซี่ขนาดนี้เลยเหรอฮะอ่านบทต้องเซ็กซี่ขนาดนี้เลยเหรอ
They've worked together as romantic on-screen couples in numerous shows, and they have bonkers chemistry, but we also know they're just platonic friends. They've both dated other people in the meantime, but that doesn't make their friendship or their constantly fawning over each other any less real. Friendship is just as important as romance, guys, and framing their relationship as somehow lesser just because they're not actually a couple is super weird. Sure, they basically live in each other's assholes, but have you ever seen me and my friend Leah in the same room? We're obsessed with each other. People passing us on the street might think we're dating, and that doesn't bother us at all because we're not doing it for them. If actors are comfortable doing fan service, I have absolutely no problem with letting them go hog wild. We should all kiss our homies sometimes, as a treat. But my concern is that I don't always know which ones are actually comfortable with it all. You know, because they're actors. And every time the facade slips, even a little bit, or one of them is having a bad day and isn't as affectionate as usual, a mob of furious BL stans rise up to scrutinize it and then form their own conclusions with basically no evidence at all. It's concerning. But for the moment at least, it seems like it's here to stay. Getting back to what I said earlier, companies are getting better at drawing lines between characters and actors, even if fan service is still a staple of the industry, and they're also making concerted efforts to have stories penned by queer people, directed by queer people, and acted in by queer people. There are still the occasional duds, like Tonhon Chunlati, which seems to go out of its way to be as subtly homophobic as possible. It stars a bunch of really excellent actors who have played gay characters before and since, but the way it's written stamps the heterosexual romance dogma firmly over their performances. The main relationship is seen as lesser by Tonhon's parents, and particularly by his father, because he wants Ton to carry on his bloodline. Never mind that he has another child who can do it for him, because she's his daughter, and bloodlines only count if they're misogynistic, damn it! Rather than resolving this storyline by having Ton tell his father that he doesn't want kids, or even that he does, but that it's not relevant right now because he's still a college student and also fuck off, it goes out of its way to bend over backwards to appease the misogynistic, homophobic dad. By saying that they can just adopt their pregnant friend's baby. Girl, what? There are other dramas that, while popular, haven't quite shaken off the shackles of early yaoi heterosexual tropes, like Together. I know admitting that Together isn't really my thing is going to get me murdered, but honestly, I never got it. Their chemistry is fine, I guess, but it's not nearly sizzling enough to make up for the stilted plotline, awkward back and forth flirting, overly heteroified couple dynamics, completely sterile kisses, and some outright homophobia towards Green as a character. Because he's not an easy to swallow gay person. He's loud, he's effeminate, he's quirky. The show feels the need to separate Sarawat and Tyne from that kind of gay person, to assert that they're better because they don't appear so obviously gay. Green is also written to be pretty overbearing and keeps not taking no for an answer, even when Tyne has said it multiple times. And I'm not saying that those people don't exist, they absolutely do, but I am saying that playing into the predatory gaze trope in one of your most popular BLs that is otherwise completely sanitized of queerness or flavour is not a good look. While we're at it, I also don't like Fish Upon the Sky, which is less about the heterosexual tropes than it is about the normalizing of fandom over are real people within the show. He repeatedly expresses to Mork that Mork's fan club makes him uncomfortable. The constant scrutiny sets off his anxiety and his self-loathing, and that Mork constantly trying to make their relationship more public is actively damaging his mental health. But the show frames this as something for him to overcome with the power of his boyfriend ignoring his concerns and pushing him into the public eye anyway, rather than a toxic relationship with somebody who keeps not hearing him because it doesn't fit his own narrative of their relationship. Don't get me wrong, I love Ponfuin and Never Let Me Go is giving me absolute life right now, but I am so glad Fish Upon the Sky isn't the only thing we have of theirs anymore, because it's a really bad romance that could have been great if they just tweaked it a bit more and made the fan clubification of real people's relationships out to be as weird as it actually is. But for the most part, since 2020, THAI BLs have moved forward in leaps and bounds. We're portraying interesting relationships, unhealthy relationships in a critical way rather than just endorsing them. We're no longer constantly applying heterosexual standards to gay relationships, and we're slowly inching away from that seemingly inescapable trope where one half of the couple is always more reluctant to do anything physical than another.
This one is slightly different because the fact that they kiss, it sort of reveals their relationship to their two friends who didn't know that they were dating. I mainly included this one for this shot because of this random girl turning around to react in shock. This is so funny to me.
It's really weird how prevalent that trope has been. Like leftovers from the non-con days where it's not quite actual non-con, but it's uncomfy. Why would I want to watch a couple where one of them is constantly shoving the other one away? It's giving married couple on an 80s sitcom, and nobody wants to be one of those. Luckily, we're actually starting to leave those tropes in the dust as the industry expands and the show's plots and characters get more varied. We've moved out of high school and university and are doing thriller crime dramas, Groundhog Day style hospital dramas, and horny mafia spectaculars. And it's glorious. So without further ado, here are my top 10, or slightly more, THAI BL recs. Actually, somewhat in order. Special mentions go to Cutie Pie, YAOI, 2 Moons 2, and Star and Sky for being the fluffiest fun shows to watch when I need something easy, but which don't quite have enough substance to make the list. There are also probably like 5 more shows that the moment I stop recording this, I'm gonna remember need to be on this list, and then I'm gonna cry about it. It's fine. We're all doing fine here. Number 10, Love in the Air and Secret Crush on You. I'm lumping these together because I can't actually cut it down to 10. I can't do it. And also because they're both horny and chaotic. Love in the Air is divided in half. The first half is about a man with half a brain cell falling for a biker bisexual who is already smitten by him. Did somebody say more asexual? That is a common kind of sexuality in Thai dramas, and I love it. And the second half is a really touching story about someone recovering from past abuse with a guy who used to be a playboy until he met him. They had me in the first half with the dumb shit and then KO'd me with the emotional arcs. Similarly to Secret Crush on You, which I initially thought I was going to hate. It's about a guy who's obsessed with the hot guy on campus to the point where he's basically pseudo-stalking him and collects stuff he's touched. It's weird, but what makes it work is that the guy he's obsessed with absolutely loves that Toe is a little freak. I don't know what more asexual is for little weird guys, but No's got it. He loves writhing Toe up, there's some dumb hijinks throughout, but as with Love in the Air, it gets surprisingly earnest towards the end, and you don't realise how much you love all of these characters until you're crying over the trans character's love interest telling her he doesn't need her to be anybody but herself because he likes her as she is.
แต่เห็นหนูทำขนาดเนี้ยหนูเป็นตุ๊ดนะพี่ไม่รู้สึกแปลกหรอต่อให้หนูเป็นผู้ชายแล้วบอกว่าอยากให้พี่เป็นเมียพี่ก็เป็นให้ได้นะแสดงว่าหนูกลับไปเป็นเหมือนเดิมได้แล้วใช่ไหมอะแรดๆเลยนะ
Number 9, Not Me. Do you want shows about queer revolution, fighting the power, and dismantling violent and oppressive political and capitalist structures using protest, arson, and graffiti? Then this is the show for you. White lives a life of relative luxury, but when his twin brother Black is nearly beaten to death, he can feel it and decides to take Black's identity and infiltrate the gang he was a part of to figure out which one of them did it. He ends up agreeing with their cause and helping them on missions, all while falling in love with Sean, someone who had previously really disliked Black. Excellent work on all sides, and in my opinion, Off-Gun's best performances. Number 8, I Told Sunset About You. Do you like crying? Me too! Go watch the show! It's just so emotional. 2 kids in love, repressed, dealing with not only their burgeoning gay feelings for each other, but also their rivalry, their friendship, their families, their environments. It's so upsetting and it's everything to me. Also, go listen to P. Cricket's music. The man owns all the gender. Number 7, Kin Porsche. Speaking of a man who owns all the gender, Jeff Satura's in this. Kin Porsche is also one of the horniest things I've ever seen, and I loved every deranged second of it. Kin, a mafia boss, hires Porsche to be his bodyguard, and things escalate from there. Kin's older brother Tankin is incredibly fabulous and queer. His younger brother is played by Jeff Satur, enough said, and the maid side couple is a weird dom-sub torturer and torturee dynamic that I thought I would hate, but ended up really enjoying.
ตอนแรกกูจะฆ่ามึงแล้วแต่กูเปลี่ยนใจว่ะมึงค่อยดูน่าสนใจขึ้นมาหน่อย
But oh my god, definitely check the trigger warnings on this one before you watch it. It is a mafia show after all. Number 6, Tale of Thousand Stars. Not the last back off no panache directed entry on this list.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which...
This is about somebody who gets a heart transplant and then goes to the village where the girl he got the heart from had worked when she was alive. He ends up falling for the ranger there. And part of what makes the show so fantastic is how undeniably queer it is. There's none of that I'm not gay, I just like you energy. There's just two people falling for each other and knowing it, and it's absolutely brilliant. Piaf has an amazing talent for creating queer stories that really feel real, because as a queer man himself, he always surrounds himself with other queer members of the crew and goes out of his way to cast actors that are already friends who are comfortable enough with each other that their chemistry is undeniable. Since the show, Earthmix have basically been inseparable as a pairing, and it's crazy how often Piaf is able to cast so well. Even when he's given the keys to existing kingdoms like Still Together, he manages to elevate them beyond what they started with. Number 5, Kiss Me Again and Dark Blue Kiss. Speaking of off-given keys to kingdoms, he directed the second season of Kiss Me Again, Dark Blue Kiss. Both of these seasons are great for different reasons, but if, like me, you just love Pete and Cal's dynamic and enjoy seeing Tainu on screen, both of them are worth the watch. Some people swear by the first season being better, some people swear by the second. I think they both have their merits. In terms of queer representation, Dark Blue Kiss takes it, because Piaf is a genius and we should all bow down before him.
ทำไมต้องพิสูจน์ตัวเองมากกว่าคนอื่นด้วยวะแม่งไม่ยุติธรรมเลยกูกับมึงก็ผู้ชายทั่วไปปะวะเหมือนพอเป็นแบบเนี้ยก็ทำให้เขาผิดหวังนะต้องเป็นคนดีต้องมีงานดีๆต้องทำให้เขาภูมิใจนะกูดีเพราะกูอยากดีเองไม่ใช่กูชอบผู้ชายแล้วกูต้องทำตัวให้ดีกว่าคนอื่น
But in terms of showing the beginning of their relationship and the way it evolves from enemies to friends to lovers, Kiss Me Again has half the BLs in the country beat. Number 4, Triage. Triage is a Groundhog Day style time loop story set in the ER of a hospital where Tin loses a patient and then gets stuck in a loop, only to be told he can only escape the loop if he saves said patient. This requires him trying to stop the events which caused him to end up in the hospital, which also means he meets him a bunch of times and slowly ends up falling for the abrasive, seemingly unlikable at first Thor. I'm a slut for a good time loop. Watch this space for a video I have on those coming out at some point, and this show executes it immaculately.
ระวังตัวให้ดีนะคืนนี้น้องจะตาย
Also, we love two bi protagonists. Absolutely iconic. Number 3, Until We Meet Again and Between Us. Do you want to cry? Fucking strap in, because this show will make you do it. Until We Meet Again, and the currently airing sequel about the side couple Between Us, which is also excellent, is just phenomenal. A couple that died together because the world wasn't ready to accept them for who they were get reincarnated into two people who, when they meet, start having flashbacks of memories that aren't their own. The juxtaposition of the two love stories in tandem, the way they would fall in love with each other no matter when or where they are, the emotional resonance of certain parallels to scenes that I refuse to talk about because I will cry. It's just an exceptional piece of media and I can't recommend it highly enough. Number 2, Love by Chance. Come on, you knew this had to be on the list. Love by Chance is one of the sweetest love stories I have ever seen, and it launched the careers of two of the best actors in the industry right now, Saint and Perth. Putting all of the messy management stuff from behind the scenes aside, this show is truly exceptional and shows what an impact a quiet, earnest love story can have on audiences around the world. Pete are just so wholesome, and as a queer person who knows exactly how it feels to realize your feelings aren't entirely platonic for somebody who might not take it well, it really spoke to me on a spiritual level. Also, I love a healthy dose of hurt comfort, and this show delivered that to me in spades.
ถอดเสื้อนะถอดเสื้อเหรอครับอายอะไรวะผู้ชายด้วยกัน
And my number 1 pick, the light of my life, my raison d'etre. Number 1, Bad Buddy. Is anybody surprised? Listen, this show fundamentally changed me as a person. Anybody who's friends with me knows exactly how much I could not shut up about this the entire time it was airing. Hell, we had a fun PowerPoint night, and my PowerPoint was why this show is the greatest queer romance of all time. So allow me to give you an abridged version of that PowerPoint now. Once again, Piaf is our one true saviour, and he cast two people who were already well known to be best friends, so the chemistry was baked in before they even started. Pat, played by Om, and Pran, played by Nanon, have lived next door to each other their entire lives, but their parents hate each other, so they're forced into a rivalry, academic, sporting, and personal. It's giving modern Romeo and Juliet, but with the comedic stylings of Much Ado About Nothing, particularly in the way Pat Pran talk to each other. Very Beatrice and Benedict, which is very sexy of them, to be honest.
อย่าดีแต่ปากทำจริงให้ได้ก่อนค่อยมาพูดงั้นมาแข่งกันใค ใครรู้สึกก่อนแพ้หรือดิว
In high school, they became secret friends, and Pran's mother found out and was so furious she made him transfer schools and quit guitar. They haven't seen each other for 3 years when they realise they're at the same uni in rival faculties. Engineering, Pat versus architecture. Pran. Their friends hate each other. Their families hate each other, but they just can't help but get along. And maybe there are some other feelings underneath. Because as it turns out, Pran has been in love with Pat since high school. He never explicitly says this, except in his eyes, in every single scene, and also in the love song he wrote back in high school that he played with Pat for the Christmas event, which was the way his mother found out they were friends. And he's still in love with him now. At this point, Pat thinks he still has a thing for their friend Ink, and his sister gives him some signs to look to see if she likes him. Then, he sees Pran in the music shop, and...
อีกฝ่ายจะมีอาการสายตาคงก็ไม่ได้หรอกเช็คดูเขาอาจจะอยากรู้ว่าเรามีแฟนหรือยัง
ลองดีนะมึง แฟน มึงจะไปกวนตีนกูไหม
ถ้ายังไม่ชัวร์มีข้อสุดท้าย เมื่อเขาอยู่ใกล้เราเขาจะไม่ค่อยเป็นตัวของตัวเอง
These motherfuckers dedicated an entire episode to Pran's italicized oh moment. And it was only episode 5. This is important because it led to the moment that broke the entire BL industry. I don't want to tell you much more than this because I think you should just watch this show, but I would like to talk about the fact that P-Off explicitly uses the product placement for good. Anybody who watches Asian shows will tell you that most of them shoehorn product placement in there so overtly it's like getting bonked over their head with it. Like pausing the narrative to espouse the virtues of a drink or brand for a full minute over it. And while that's the standard in countries like Korea and Thailand, it can feel really jarring to Western audiences who have been rallying against product placement for years. Backoff as a director is so embarrassed about doing product placement that he does his level best to properly work them into the plot.
กูจะเป็นลูกสามเหลี่ยมไหมหรอ กูนึกว่าลูกหัวใจ ชอบแบบไม่มากอดกันนะ
In Bad Buddy, this results in them being used for positive reasons, like strengthening their relationship, and most commonly, for horny reasons. This show breaks basically every negative yaoi convention, looking those terrible tropes directly in the face as they flip them off and do wheelies on their corpses. There is a willow aside couple.
สบายใจปะสบายสิ
There's supportive straight friends.
กูไม่ทำให้พวกมึงอึดอัดหรอก โอ้โห อึดอัดอะไร นี่มึงดูนี่ใคร เดี๋ยวกูเคลียร์เองหาเลยแยกเรื่องออกดิวะ เรื่องส่วนตัวนะเว้ย
There's an actual conversation about how inaccurate the whole top-bottom husband-wife stereotype is.
มีอะไรจะทำให้มึงรู้สึกชนะขึ้นว่างั้นกูให้มึงเรียกกูก็ได้ เป็นไงวะเจมี่อยู่นั้นไงครับผัว เข้าใจยัง
And there's no non-con in sight. That seems like a low bar, but I have watched over 200 of these, and let me tell you that far more than 10% of them do not achieve it. When I say Bad Buddy is revolutionary, I mean it unironically. P-Off be out here really revolutionizing the BL industry and truly making it queer. And he's not the only one. There are trans directors like Anucha Bunyawatana, who made Not Me,
a show explicitly about revolution under oppressive power structures, and Golf Tamarin, who made The Eclipse after being shadily ousted as a politician for unjust reasons and wanted to use her platform to rally against queerphobia and corrupt politicians and the way that oppressive power structures affect the people living in them.
And openly gay creators like Jojo Chichikorn, who explicitly got into the industry because he felt that gay characters were typically either represented as sassy, tragic figures, or as cute schoolboy couples, and wanted to expand that into more diverse queer representation. Their characters actually have sexual desires like real people without reducing them to just that, and they can be gay, bi, pan, trans, non-binary, or anything in between. They're a bit slow on the ace uptake, but we can forgive them for that. There are more and more writers and directors like this emerging every year, and they're really setting the example not just for Thai BL, but for the world on how to make compelling, accurate queer content without always watering it down to sterility or over-sexualizing it to the point of fetishization. So the industry might have some issues, and we've still got a ways to go, but we're still going. And we're getting louder every year. You don't have to like every show I've recommended, but I do suggest going away and watching at least one. The queer community isn't just one thing, so if you find one show isn't accurate to your experience, there will be another show out there that is. Western media should learn a thing or two from BL, because unless it's Heartstopper or helmed by Ryan Murphy, whose works feel homophobic even though he's a queer man, everything queer we make gets panned or cancelled. Netflix, I am looking directly at you with a gun. Stop cancelling women-led greenlight queer shows. While Netflix is doing that, Thailand and the Philippines and Korea are greenlighting more GLs than ever before, and they're reaping all the rewards. Even if you're a corporation that only cares about money, cough Disney cough, you can't deny the cold hard fact that BL and GL and QL are becoming a multi-million-dollar industry, and you'd be stupid not to get in on that, no matter how bigoted you're pretending not to be. BL isn't just YAOI anymore, it's queer storytelling, and anybody who disagrees is telling on themselves. Welcome to the rabbit hole, Alice. We're all queer down here. There was so much I wanted to cover that wasn't strictly relevant, so I left it out, so I'm gonna do like a little speed run here. Everybody should play Staircase Bingo with that one dangerous looking staircase that keeps showing up in like every drama. Seriously, there's a running list, it's so many. Bizarre sound effects. This is especially prevalent in Thai BLs, but it appears in Japanese, Filipino, and Vietnamese ones as well. The strangest choices for me are the stereotypical horny music in Vietnam every time they so much as kiss. And the mind-boggling and attention-grabbing sound effects of some Thai BLs. Terrible audio. Seriously, among Thai BL fans, it has become a meme how bad the audio is. There's constant mic rustling, the audio mixing is frequently a mess, especially with all those sound effects thrown in, and it's just so bad. We'd love to see it, or rather, not hear it properly. And yet, despite the horrendous audio, Thailand has some of the best OSTs of all time. Kin Porsche's theme absolutely slays. Big Dragon's theme rules. Every song on the Bad Buddy soundtrack outdoes the last. And Tilly's songs keep getting used in trailers and ruining my life because I can't stop listening to them. It's not just Thailand either. The kdrama ones are good. And the Japanese ones slap. Nobody is doing it like the BL industry. Absolutely iconic behaviour. Please never stop going way too hard in all your OSTs. But more than anything else, I just wanted to talk about how much of an impact this show has had on me in terms of like expressing myself and my queer identity. Like, I've always been very outspokenly queer basically since I moved back to the UK and properly came out. This show has made me start dressing more how I want to dress. Start talking about queer stuff more openly with people. It's helped me make friends. Hi Ella. And hi all my Tumblr friends also. It's just improved my quality of life in a way that I'm not sure everybody who isn't queer will get, but I do think that a lot of non-queer people will get it, because so many people feel othered by society, whether it's because they're queer or a person of colour or disabled or any number of other things, whether you're neurodivergent, autistic, have ADHD, there is always something that can make you feel excluded, and shows like this that have the excluded characters as the protagonists of the narrative and not in some pre-written, oh he's just a bit different, Jughead, I'm weird way.
Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
But in a tangible way that you can feel, that you know real society would not interact well with this person. It really affects how deeply you care for these characters. Like, I understand where the line I'm not gay, I just like you comes from, much as it's fucking stupid. Learn what bisexuality is, it's not hard! But I kind of get somebody actually saying that in real life, because it's really scary to label yourself as gay. It's really scary to look at yourself in the mirror and admit that you aren't quote-unquote normal. And much as those shows I don't think did a great job of normalizing it, they did do a good job of opening the door to normalizing it. And that's fantastic. I think Singto is going to go really far in his career. I think Max and Tool are brilliant. There are so many shows that I didn't get to mention because I just didn't have time. The Eclipse is really good. That's also really political.
แล้วคอยดูนายอนันต์ว่าเขาต้องการอะไรกันแน่เธอเรียนหนังสือเธอต้องยึดตามตำราแล้วการศึกษาที่ดีก็ควรมีไว้เพื่อเปิดกว้างเพื่อการต่อยอดผมเห็นด้วยกับอายครับ
There's so much commentary being made on how different queer people react. And there are bad queer characters in these shows that are written to be not good people in a way that is believable and doesn't feel like it's just villainizing queer people, because half the show is queer. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the saying, like, you can't have bury your gays if half the cast is gay, because then it's just a character dying. It's the same thing. Like, you can't be villainizing all queer people if your show is made up almost entirely of queer people. And that's great. It means that when we do have queer villains, they are fleshed out, interesting characters that you actually want to understand more. To me, this feels like a massive step forward in queer representation in society, and I need the West to embrace it yesterday. I need all of my friends and also everybody else to just come over here and just hug all of the BLs in Asia for me, because, like, oh my god, they're everything to me. They have improved my quality of life so much. Like, this, I wouldn't have made it through this year without all the BLs I was watching. I really wouldn't. It's been rough, and if nobody else has got me, I know my Nivea product placement has got me. Am I right, lads? That's all I really wanted to say. I don't really have an outro. I know that the moment I stop recording, I'm going to think of like 100 other things I wanted to say. So maybe I might make a sequel to this video at some point in the future, maybe reflecting on some of the things I said here, or expanding on the list of shows that I think are great. But in the meantime, if you want me to do more thorough deep dives on any particular one of these shows, or genres of these shows, or countries, like, please let me know. I love talking about this stuff. I love doing the research for this. I spent so long writing this script. It was great. Please comment. Please let me know. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'm slowly growing this channel crazily. Like, that wasn't my intention when I started making videos again a few months ago, but, like, it's really nice to see so many of you. It makes me really emotional. Shout out to all of the Tumblr people that I reached out to ask them what their favorite little tropes were and chatted to about this. Like, you guys are all great. I'm so glad that, like, I have you to talk to about this sort of thing, and that you got equally as excited as I was when I talked about writing this essay. Even if you're not sure if, like, you know, BL or QL will be your thing, try it out. You know, if you like the sound of any of these plots, try it out. A lot of it's on YouTube. Some of it's on Netflix. If you have a Viki subscription, you can get it that way. There are not so legal ways of watching it, but I don't recommend those. I don't. But so much of it's on YouTube, especially Thai BL. There's so many Thai BLs on YouTube. Watch those. Join a community in Tumblr, because it is a community. And some people in it are fucking stupid, as with all communities on the internet and in life. You can just block them. It's really easy. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for sitting through however long this video ended up being. Thank you for indulging me as I talk about one of my insane hyperfixations, and thank you to the BL industry for saving my life, and also specifically to P off for saving the BL industry. I'm off to go watch some more gay shit. Annyeong!